Doctor, doctor, doctor. The Screen Companion presents Resuscitating the Ninth Doctor, celebrating Christopher Eccleston's run of Doctor Who. Episodes 6, 7, and 8. Let's start with the Ninth Doctor and Rose. They begin the 6th episode entitled Dalek, deep underground in a vault of alien artifacts owned by American magnate Henry Van Staten. The industrialist is obsessed with collecting and exploiting extraterrestrial technology. His centerpiece? A living 5-foot-tall coffee pot with plunger hands. But a horrified doctor knows what it really is. A killing machine, with orders to exterminate all other creatures. Once the alien menace is free and wreaking havoc in Van Staten's facility, can even the Doctor stop his lifelong foe? John, what did you know about the Daleks before this episode when it originally aired?
Not a lot at all. From my understanding, because of old 60s, 70s, and 80s limitations in television special effects, that they're hokey. I've seen interviews with older British actors talking about hiding behind the couch. I guess that was huge in Britain every time a Dalek was on TV. I'd never seen them in the original stuff. I didn't know anything else.
It's hard for me to imagine even some of the scariest movies that I shouldn't have been watching when I was 9 years old. I never hid behind a couch, did you?
No. I don't think I've ever lived in a place where the couch wasn't against the wall.
Oh yeah, that's true. There is that aspect of it.
Maybe that's a weird British thing. It's like, we gotta put the couch in the middle of the living room.
Yeah, or else where are the kids gonna hide?
The Dalek comes in here to murder everyone. If they can't get behind the couch, they're done.
If the British, their homes are configured in a way that hiding behind a couch is their version of pulling the sheets over your head, then okay, fair enough. I get it now.
You win this round, Britain.
I don't know about them winning.
Okay.
I just acknowledge that it's a different culture, they have different ways of doing things.
That's fair. They don't win anything.
But I would argue it's more efficient to just pull up the covers over your face.
It is more efficient. The covers protect you more.
I was coming in pretty cold. When you do see some of the older stuff, their design has barely changed. And that's incredible considering how simple they look.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Even something like the Borg in Next Generation. If you look at their first appearance with how they looked later in the series, never mind comparing them to more recent Star Trek in their depictions.
As the budget gets better, and as the special effects department gets better at making the prosthetics, yeah.
If I was a longtime fan, I might be off-put by how loyal the design has stayed to its original creation. But since I had no bias one way or the other, I was okay with the way they looked. You know, as long as they look weird and different, that's enough. How well do you think they set up the Daleks as one of the Doctor's greatest enemies?
I felt they did a really good job in this episode. It's the first time we've seen the Doctor scared as a newcomer. It's the first time he's scared. All the emotions he claims to be above earlier in the season. He's afraid. He shows malice towards it. Uncaring.
I don't think it's the description of the Dalek and the history with the Doctor that drives it home. I think it really is Eccleston's emotions that let you know how important it is.
His amazing acting, if we haven't gotten high on his horse enough yet this whole show.
Heck no, John. We can never get too high. And when we get to the highest peak at the end of this season, I'm not dismounting.
We're staying there.
But overall, what do you think of Daleks as antagonists?
I really liked him at first. One of my biggest complaints I would have to say for Russell T Davies is that he brought them back every season. You don't get a sense, oh, they're back, this is terrifying. Like, the Borg only showed up, 3 or 4 times in Next Generation?
Maybe half a dozen times in the entire series.
That's still pretty good for a near 300 episode show.
And every time they came back, you would see a different facet of them. They would do something new with them.
Yes.
That's definitely my gripe as well. I thought they got stale by the time Matt Smith was the Doctor, because they just popped up again and again to be a threat, but I don't feel like they added much to the canon with subsequent appearances.
No, they can't. And they made them all rainbowy, I guess, for the children. I read somewhere that the height of the Daleks were based upon the eye level of the companion.
Ooh.
The Dalek was short because Rose Piper is short. And then, I guess for Matt Smith's run, their height increased because Amy Pond was taller.
Interesting. I would also accept if they were 3 feet tall, specifically to scare children. 4-year-old, that's going to be scary as heck.
What a great threat that is literally only a threat to a child. Adults just don't care. There's a tiny little Dalek in the house. We're like, well, he's not going to hurt me. Have fun, Timmy.
If they did a Gremlins-like special, because whether you're 2 feet or 20 feet, when you're shooting lasers and killing people, you're still a monstrous threat. Yeah, if they were small enough, you could put one into a microwave.
Oh, man. Or a blender, I think was one of the situations.
Exactly. I remember seeing it online that the show was contractually obligated to use them at least once a season. On the Doctor Who Companion.com, there's an article from 2020 that disproves that notion with multiple facts, the most obvious one being that from Matt Smith onward, there were a few seasons that didn't have any Dalek-centered stories. But I believe when I was hearing the rumors, they had been in every season, so it was hard to say it wasn't true. But I think that just goes to show how they were appearing too much, that fans were asking, God, how do we explain this? Why do they keep putting them in here? Nobody wants them.
It undermined the original story of the genocide that the Doctor committed to get rid of them, and he sacrificed his own people.
There's always this problem with the big bad. The more you see of them, the less scary they're going to be. Just like with the Borg, how much they showed up in Voyager.
Because Voyager couldn't find its own footing on its main villain. But that's a whole different podcast, I guess.
I don't mind getting into it a little bit here.
Alright, let's throw some hands against Voyager.
I would say the comparison gets more apt when you realize it was the end of Season 3 of Voyager where they threw in the Borg, and then you have 7 of 9 coming in. And I think that parallels Doctor Who, because once you get into Matt Smith, Daleks keep showing up, and then Clara came into the picture and was his companion. She was a Dalek at one point.
Oh, yeah. That was a weird episode.
What do you think should be the audience age minimum for this darker Doctor Who tale?
PG-13. Teenagers and up. Because there's a lot of murder in this. They're still trying to pay homage to the old graphics, but the graphics are better, so the murders are more. Ooh.
There's torture.
The themes in general. The torture, the revenge, the hatred. This is not a kid's tale.
The episodes previous to this one, I don't think they ramp up to this level of emotion. It's like whiplash in this episode.
Because he's happy to help when he's alone in the dark room. And he's like, oh, I'm so happy to help. I'm just a good guy. I'm the Doctor. And then as soon as the eye stalk glows and he hears the doctor, he's like, oh no, it's time for murder. I have made a mistake.
Yep, I believe in time travel and time murder.
Impossible. It's not working. Look at you. If you can't kill, then what are you good for, Dalek? You're nothing! What the hell are you here for?
I am waiting for orders!
Well, you're never gonna get any. Not ever.
I demand orders!
They're never gonna come! Your race is dead! You all burn, all of you. 10 million ships on fire. The entire Dalek race wiped out in 1 second.
You lie!
I watched it happen. I made it happen!
You destroyed us!
I had no choice.
And what of the Time Lords?
They burnt with you. The end of the last great time war.
And the coward survived.
But what would you rate this story from 1 to 5?
As long as we don't have to do full rankings of episodes, I'm going to give this a 5, and I think 5 will come up a couple more times.
This season's definitely backloaded.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go 4. There's still some stupid plot details that seem to plague most of Eccleston's run, but the drama here was top-notch. All the emotions we've been talking about from the Doctor. You have a monster that gets introspective. Granted, that's after he kills a bunch of folks.
Right? His ultimate character arc is still murder.
And then even Rose gets to act sad, a little embarrassed at the part she plays in the plot. What was your favorite scene?
The stairs, as a throwback joke to the old series of Daleks Can't Go Upstairs. And then it just casually says levitate. And it flies after them. Which, given the little take, it makes perfect sense. I thought the scene where everyone is concentrating their fire, the Dalek goes into the room, and he allows the Doctor to watch on the screen as he only fires like 2 or 3 shots to kill this room full of dozens of people while staring down the camera. The Doctor's reverse staring, also staring down the camera. They don't know they're staring at each other, but they are.
Is that the scene where the Dalek electrocutes a bunch of people?
Yeah, it shoots the sprinkler system and then shoots the floor, and it electrocutes everybody.
That is effective. I want to go back for a moment. The stairs. I like that they answered that for fans, because I don't believe they ever addressed how a Dalek gets upstairs before. Which is weird considering the show started in '63. And the Daleks were introduced in William Hartnell's first Doctor era, so they've been around since practically the beginning.
Them and the Cybermen, I think, are his first 2 real foes.
Yeah. As far as niggling details, okay, you're running away from a creature that easily kill you, and they're gonna stop on the stairs to see if it can get up. Keep running, what are you doing?
You don't need to know if he can or not, you just need to know that he's not behind you.
When that bulkhead shuts on Rose, I'm like, yeah, if you didn't stop to check if that thing was going to get up the stairs, you would have made it.
But you had to gawk. You had to stand and gawk.
I'll settle on the ending, where the Daleks' outer casing opens up and it's revealed how pitifully small and weak they are without their armor. It's not the same setup, but I had sympathy for it the same way I did watching Boris Karloff as the monster. At a certain point, it doesn't want to harm anyone, it just wants to free itself of its existence. But that scene also makes the Doctor look like the villain, doesn't it?
Very much so. Rose's exact lines of, "It's not the one pointing a gun at me right now."
But what were your biggest problems with the episode?
Some of the shots were weird. The wide shot of the vault with all the tech in it, I wanted to zoom in, but they clearly just took one still shot and kept using it. So that was a bit of a production value issue. I still don't think I understand how the Daleks suckered the one guy to death.
Man, the Dalek could start its own plumbing business with that powerful hand.
it's sucking a man up. And not like a pervert way either.
Hey, you don't know that Dalek isn't getting sexual pleasure. How else is it supposed to get its rocks off?
It might. I don't know. We saw it naked. I didn't see any genitals.
They're all on the inside.
Oh, okay. That's fair. That happens with people.
You thought that one thing on its one tentacle was a pimple?
Waving one of its tentacles around, that could have easily been its dick.
Why did it keep asking Rose to rub it?
Yeah. I am in pain. Rub my tentacle. Yes. Slower.
My biggest problem, once again, I hate the music. In this case, it stepped on some of the drama. Like the emotions in that final scene. You got the Dalek, Rose, the Doctor. That's effective enough without the score.
Because it felt like they recorded everything for the pilot and then just reused the 5 or 6 scores that they had.
I get music can enhance the drama, but when you have a scene where I just want to listen to the dialogue, and when the music gets in the way of that, turn the music off. Also, I hate the way the Dalek makes his initial escape. Rose touches it, and that gives it the strength it was missing to break loose of its restraints.
They specifically said not to touch it. It had already roasted several people.
The Dalek explains, extrapolating the biomass of a time traveler regenerated me. Right. Along with reversing the polarity and flushing the tachyon particle grid.
always flush your tachyon particle grid.
They couldn't think of a less contrived way to do it, huh?
It's weird sci-fi mumbo-jumbo. That's probably one of the hardest things to write in general, right?
If you're pushed into a room and told to start writing, but come on, these guys had to have had months ahead of time to think about it.
This was definitely a passion project for Russell T Davies. He's probably been thinking about that for a long time. All through Queer Eye or Queer as Folk, whatever one of those shows he wrote.
Queer as Folk.
That's it, yeah.
Do you think Queer Eye, they could do a new version with the Dalek? Is that eye stock a Queer Eye?
That's Queer Eye for the Exterminate guy.
Doctor, we must talk about what you're wearing.
That jumper is too 90s.
Yeah, it looks so last year. Exterminate those awful shoes. We'll get you new ones. Do you think this episode is closer to science fiction or science fantasy?
I'm gonna go fiction, even though we just made fun of all the weird reasons the Dalek was able to escape.
But at least they threw in that stupid line about the biomass. That's a little hand wave I'll accept. Nudges it a little to the science fiction, I suppose.
Yeah.
What do you think is the darkest Ninth Doctor moment here?
We were just talking about the emotional whiplash, right? Of going from happy to help to afraid, and then as soon as he knew he was safe, he went to torture. He got in on the torture action of this Dalek.
Yeah, wasn't he trying to pick up a drill when they stopped him?
Yeah.
That one moment where he tells the Dalek to die, and you get that perfectly choreographed spittle in the corner of his mouth that made him look ugly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I noticed that. It was great.
The Screen Companion is available on multiple platforms, including Podbean, Amazon Music Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. Tell us your review, vote for what we should cover next, or let certain guests know they're your favorite via thescreencompanion@gmail.com or by posting on the Screen Companion group on Facebook. Thanks to everyone in the States and abroad for listening. Further support the host by purchasing his novel, Traversal, The Weight of Worlds, available in both digital and print formats on Amazon.com. The 5th season of The Screen Companion begins September 1st, 2024. Now back to the show. What do you think about this season's connection to the original show? Do you think it's smart that they put it in? Do you feel like they should have done a complete reboot?
Reboots piss people off a lot. So I think it was smarter. You're not ignoring what came before. It's both callback to the old series and a nice little setup for the next season when they do bring in Cybermen.
I don't think I'm against total reboots, because as we're talking about it, I'm reminded of the sadness in my heart for the J.J. Abrams Star Trek. It's like, if you want to do a soft reboot, I'm okay. I don't think Doctor Who, the revival, as it went along, adhered enough to the continuity of the original show. And if you're going to bring it in and say this isn't a totally fresh start, then you got to deal with the baggage that the continuity brings. Or else you're just trying to pander to folks without really putting in the effort.
I don't know. I don't know if this is pandering. I mean, there is some pandering.
Well, this is where I'm talking about the franchise more in general terms, not the specific episode. I thought just the right amount in this.
Oh, okay. That's fair.
It gets on my nerves anytime the Doctor says impossible, like when he first sees the Dalek.
He killed them all personally.
But it's like, dude, you're a 900-year-old time traveler that can morph into another person every time you die.
Yeah.
Haven't you learned? That's one thing I hated about Stephen Moffat's 11th Doctor. It was like every episode somebody would exclaim, "That's impossible! No one can do that!" And inevitably it would happen the moment they needed a twist or a way to end the episode.
That was... Oh.
Yeah.
Stephen Moffat's a whole other beast.
If we ever do our least favorite episodes of the revival, we'll get into it.
Well, I don't know. The guy came after him. Woo!
Do you know how the Dalek actually functioned on set?
No. It's got to be like a Jabba the Hutt-esque puppet. Bunch of cords sticking out of it, and people are operating it like it's just a really big Kermit.
I believe the headpiece with the eye stalk swiveling, that is radio controlled. But then the way it moves, there's actually a guy sitting on a chair inside there, shuffling along like it's Flintstones.
So they could do the remote control for the head, but they can't give the guy inside basically a go-kart. That's funny that he's shuffling. The shuffling along like it's Flintstones is hilarious to me.
We move on to episode 7. John, what is The Long Game about?
The Doctor, Rose, and newly anointed TARDIS traveler Adam travel 200,000 years into the future and land on Satellite 5, a space station orbiting Earth. From the moment they arrive, the Doctor feels that something is wrong and he can't quite put his finger on it. Satellite 5 provides 600 channels of news and information to Earth. All the humans have a chip implanted in their brains and they work as computers. From there, they control the news. But something is off.
Adam, somebody they picked up in the previous episode. This is like a little two-parter for him. How would you describe that character?
In the last episode, he's a genius. They claim he's a genius. And in this episode, he's doing well for himself. Mentally, he seems like an idiot.
Well, he's avaricious.
Let's call him industrious.
Self-serving.
Very self-serving.
It was eye-rolling to me that Dalek takes place underground in a facility in Utah near Salt Lake City. And yet the one guy that the Doctor and Rose take from that facility for further adventures is the British intern.
Of all the people to die in Dalek, the British people had a 100% survival rate.
I'm noticing on this rewatch how Anglo-centric this revival is. Everything's centered around British stuff. All these characters, the ones that don't immediately die, they're all British. It makes it feel like a very small universe, all things considered.
They could expand it more. I think that is something Moffat did well. His side characters were not necessarily all white British dudes.
But what do you think of this resolution to the Adam subplot?
It felt more like a gag. A throwaway gag at the end than it did genuine character resolution.
There's so much they could have done with that character, and the idea of it I like about a companion that breaks bad. I think it highlights something off about the way they don't flesh out Rose's character. Up to this point, has she asked about the Doctor's previous companions?
No.
If I was her, I'd want to know. For instance, how many of them have died traveling with the Doctor?
Yeah.
Usually, how long does a companion travel with them?
What's the average lifespan of a companion? She doesn't ask any of that. And they keep bringing up the fact that they don't really know each other that well. A lot of the conflict comes from the fact that they're not big friends. This one, they're very buddy-buddy. There's no conflict between them at all. That's, I think, why Adam is there to begin with.
If I was the Doctor, considering I had given Rose a TARDIS key, and she's known Adam less than a day, and she automatically gives him the key for safekeeping, we'd have some words over that.
Yeah. Was it the Doctor's your boyfriend?
Oh, he's so good at sniping.
He's the best. He's the snipiest.
Would you say better than Tennant?
Yeah, I'm going to say better than Tennant. Come at me, David.
Well, when he does, you'll have pen and paper ready for an autograph, won't you?
Absolutely. He could say anything. I'd be like, oh, I love you.
All right, David, you can beat my custard. Just give me an autograph, mate. He's like, are you trying to come up with British slang? Alrighty then.
Alrighty. Jim Carrey. Just start saying Ace Ventura lines.
1 to 5, what rating would you give this episode?
I'm going to give it a 3. It's not a bad episode, but I remember reading the episode list, and I don't remember anything about this episode. What? I don't know what that one is. Literally, the rest of these, I can read the name of the episode. Be like, oh yeah, that's kind of the plot. And this one, no, that escapes me entirely.
The only things I remembered about it, Adam and people's foreheads opening, and we're about to talk about him, Simon Pegg. I do remember him.
I think I remembered the foreheads thing before Simon Pegg.
Oi, how dare you?
Your British is coming on great, mate. God, that's so insulting.
You and me, we're going to have to meet in an alley and have us a bangers and mash over this.
Yes.
What, I used that right, didn't I?
Banger, that's food.
It sounds violent. Like if you have an argument with somebody and you need to meet outside, let's meet outside for some bangers and mash.
I think it works much better as a violent threat than maybe, I don't know, a sexual maneuver. Did you hit her up for the old bangers and mash?
Well, some people really criticize British cooking, so maybe it is violent in their eyes.
There's a very good comedian who made the joke, Germans should have dropped cookbooks on him.
Hey, save that for the next episode.
Ooh, touche.
Yeah, we're getting there. I agree with you. I'll give it a 3 as well. Great individual moments and ideas. Not so much overall. Getting into our favorite scenes and performances, Simon Pegg as the lead henchman. He has an air of confidence and psychopathy that's fun to watch. And as I was seeing him do his thing, I was thinking they should have tapped him to be an incarnation of the Master.
He's got John Sim vibes to him. I guess it's just John Sim's such a good master, too. I'm happy they went with him. And it could be just big Hollywood actor, right? It's too expensive.
That's true, but I mean, back then, Simon Pegg wasn't all that, was he?
No, I want to say Shaun of the Dead had already been out.
Did that really shoot him into superstardom?
No. I talked to quite a bit of people in my life who don't know that movie.
I've only seen a few scenes from that movie.
Oh, really? You haven't seen the whole thing? Are you a big zombie fan?
I don't mind zombies. From what I saw of Shaun of the Dead, the tone of it feels off to me. That mix of comedy and horror.
That's a hard one to do. I think the whole movie's just based off a episode of the TV show that he used to have.
Oh, really? Are you talking about Spaced?
There was an episode where he did too many drugs and played Resident Evil 2 for 12 hours, so he hallucinated zombies everywhere.
I like that setup more. I'd watch that instead.
Well, that's only like 20, 30 minutes, so there you go.
You sold me. So what about this episode didn't work for you?
I think I still don't understand the bad guy of being that weird ceiling monster.
The Jagrafess.
Yeah, the Jagrafess. Even the episode didn't respect it, because they had that really funny bit where Rose couldn't get it right. They're both supposed to die, and they're like, the Jagerfire, Jägermeister. Like, they couldn't get it right. So they didn't even respect the Jagerfest. If you're not within biting distance, all the real power is coming from the fact that Simon Pegg is telling people what to do.
And I understand it's a trope of the first one or two people that become victims. They scream and you do a push in and you don't really know how they got it.
Mm-hmm.
That's already getting old for me in this show. Like, they have this one person undercover at the space station, and she makes it to the top floor, which is supposedly this great honor, and you've been promoted. And I guess we're supposed to assume that the Jagrafest got her, but how did it get her? It doesn't have hands, and she didn't look like she was torn apart by its mouthpieces, so how did it get her?
Not only how did it get her, she had a whole backstory there that we got just a quick, oh, she's a freedom fighter. She's from, what, Madagascar or something, and she's shooting in space. I want a story about her whole backstory, but that's just thrown in there. None of it is really thought through, it felt like.
And they will come back to this thread later this season. But yeah, I don't think they talk about the freedom fighters ever again.
No.
I realize this story only takes place in the year 200,000, but I don't see enough of a difference between this and the end of the world. They're both on a space platform. The big bad happens to be a stretched out face. And the sets look boring. In the scene where we first see a woman's forehead open up so she can receive an information spike directly into her brain, I couldn't help but notice the all-white walls. You can argue that room is meant to be utilitarian and nothing else. Visually, it's so underwhelming and cheap looking.
It almost felt like if it wasn't like that, they couldn't pull off the special effects properly.
When it looks like it's something you and I could slap together, that's how you know it's underwhelming.
Yeah, because we're terrible.
This particular episode, science fiction or science fantasy?
It's science dystopia fiction.
For sure. Halfway into season 1, how would you describe the Doctor and Rose's dynamic? Do you see an evolution in the way they interact compared to the first few scripts?
Yeah, like I said, there was no squabbling. All the episodes leading up to this, there's been some form of personal conflict between the two. And this one, they've evolved into accepting each other. And I think it goes further in the next episode of how they do get into a big fight, but they both know that it's not the end. It's just a fight.
In the chronology of the show, has she been hanging out with the Doctor for less than a week? It feels that way.
It does feel that way. Like, she's known him a week. When he was searching through the files on all the stuff in the space station, she was his hype man. Well, that other lady with the info spike in her forehead was impressed the whole time.
That lady with the info spike, her whole setup is that she's just a drone doing what the system tells her to do. With the Doctor's help, she questions things. Forgive me if I missed this, John. Does that lady die by the end of the episode?
No, I don't think she did.
I would have liked her to come along instead of Adam.
Yeah, that would have been much better than Adam trying to Back to the Future Part 2 it.
Because what's Adam set up in the previous episode before they take him along? It's essentially, he goes, I'm so smart, I catalog all this alien junk, but I'd really like to be out there and see this stuff live. And that's enough for Rose to go, okay, we'll take you along. That's not a character.
Just get in. They kidnapped him. The doctor did have a gun at the end of the episode. It's just like, get in.
What do you think is the darkest Doctor moment here?
When they leave Simon Pegg to die, probably. He's generally rude to everybody in this episode, but on their way out, they definitely leave Simon Pegg to die. Who had his change of conscience at the end. By change of conscience, I mean he just saw how the tide was going and decided to bolt. But still, they left him to die. They didn't even see if those drone people were still alive in some capacity, did they?
The ones in that immediate space with Simon Pegg, they established all of them were already dead.
Oh, okay.
Basically all frozen, kept in that cold room.
This is fascinating. Satellite 5 contains every piece of information within the fourth great and bountiful human empire. Birth certificates, shopping habits, bank statements, but you two, you don't exist. It's not a trace. No birth, no job. How can you walk through the world and not leave a single footprint?
Suki. Hello? Can you hear me? Suki, what have you done to her?
I think she's dead.
She's working.
They've all got chips in their head and the chips keep going. Like puppets.
Oh, you're full of information. But it's only fair we get some information back, because apparently you're no one. It's so rare not to know something. Who are you?
Since that information's keeping us alive, I'm hardly going to say, am I?
Well, perhaps my editor-in-chief can convince you otherwise.
And who's that?
It may interest you to know that this is not the fourth great and bountiful human empire. In fact, it's not actually human at all.
Simon Pegg looking like Jack Frost. The look of him wasn't really up to snuff.
He's like frosted tips to the extreme and nice blue eyes.
I'm not a makeup artist, but I think between the two of us, we could have come up with that same look for him.
This was our episode. We're just here podcasting. We could have made this episode, and we're just here podcasting about how bad it was.
I'm going to say that there's an anti-Dark Doctor moment when Adam gets kicked out of the TARDIS for trying to leverage the adventure for his own enrichment. Eccleston's doctor, instead of just pushing him out and saying, hey, don't show anybody that tech that's in your head, then they'll do experiments on you. Never mind that after you die, they might still find it anyway, and that'll cause problems for the integrity of time. I wanted his doctor to go, look, mate, you screwed up. It's a privilege to travel with me. I wanted him to scramble Adam's brain, put him in an insane asylum, something.
Lobotomize the guy who's basically lobotomized himself, but into a supercomputer.
There should be a little menace to the Doctor. And I feel like that pilot we saw from 63, the William Hartnell Doctor would have scrambled Adam's brain.
Easily. He wouldn't have hesitated. He was going to kill 2 teachers because they saw his house.
He probably would have stranded Adam on an asteroid for sneezing.
Yeah. Your lack of germ understanding is enough. Die on this planet.
Are there any little details you'd like to point out about this before we go on to our final episode?
No. Like you said, everything felt weirdly whitewashed.
I would like to point out, I get that the recurrence of the words bad wolf are a season-long mystery.
Mm-hmm.
But this rewatch, I'm thinking, how is it that Rose and the Doctor, supposedly a genius, haven't picked up on seeing it written or spoken every place they travel to?
It's literally written on the TARDIS at one point by a little kid.
I can confidently say that outside of watching this season, I may have heard Bad Wolf one time in the last month. And I think it was another TV show, and even then, I might be conflating it with The Three Little Pigs. I don't know if they even said Bad Wolf, but my point is, if I saw Bad Wolf every day, I'd become suspicious.
Agreed. Like, I live in San Francisco. I'm looking at the word 49ers right now out my window. It's the same thing. I'm always suspicious, like, something up with those Niners.
And that creepy thing that happens when, like, maybe a word you've never seen before, and then it's like, what does that mean? And you look it up, and then maybe twice in the same week that word pops up, and you're like, what the hell? What's wrong with the Matrix?
It's following me.
Is this some all-powerful deity version of me talking through the time stream?
Trying to get my attention.
Because Bad Wolf, it has a really nice payoff. Can we agree on that?
I think it was better than Season 2. I think the Season 2 payoff was the word Torchwood. All they did was nothing. They were in the background for the finale of Season 2.
One big setup for the spin-off show.
Oh, yeah. Gotta keep Captain Jack employed.
As good as Bad Wolf was for Season 1, Russell got stuck in that, we gotta do this every season now. No, you don't. Just go on to something else.
Figure something else out, because, yeah, Season 2 was Torchwood. Season 3, every episode had Vote Harold Saxon in the background. Season 4, they kept talking about the planets going missing.
When you keep doing that, it feels like you don't have better ideas.
You've got your one trick. You're good at it, but it's still the one trick.
Now, the final episode we watched for this podcast, Episode 8, Father's Day. Rose recounts how her father died when she was just a wee baby. Hit by a car on the day of a friend's wedding, Rose asks to be taken back to the year 1987 to be at her father's side so he won't expire alone. But then when they get there, she can't watch her father die and saves him. And now we're dealing with changing history, and the Doctor inevitably warns that the repercussions may spell doom for them all.
Doom!
John, do you accept the time travel rules in this episode?
Yes, I love them.
Really?
Even if they did erase themselves at one point, and that never gets brought up again. But I like the issue it caused. I like how it wasn't just a paradox. The paradox caused interdimensional monsters. That was a fun little caveat. Otherwise, the paradox is, the universe just explodes. But this is like, no, monsters come and kill everybody.
Every episode needs monsters.
It's Doctor Who.
One of the plot details is that the Reapers, those time monsters, they can't get into a church because the older something is, the harder it is for those time wraiths to besiege it. How about those huge stained glass windows? Those are too tough for time paradox dragons to break into, really?
Well, I don't think they go by our laws of physics. It's not our laws of physics that the window is keeping them out, it's their age, which has also been probably recently renovated.
There's one point where a wraith is outside the church scratching the stone exterior, but between its wings is a giant glass window. Why isn't it scratching that?
Maybe they're not smart. Maybe they're, I think he called them bacteria. Where they're from, they're single-celled organisms.
Or maybe they didn't want to be blasphemous.
Like, look, I get it. I've seen God. He's where we're from. Can't be turning this down. I'll get pissed.
Do you buy that the Doctor wouldn't immediately sacrifice Rose's father, Pete Tyler?
No. Right away, he'd have been like, well, the fastest way out of this is boop.
Yeah. As they're watching the scene unfold where Rose saves Pete, the moment he gets up, a TARDIS from another time period shows up and then hits him. A drive-by TARDIS.
It goes through.
And Rose looks at the Doctor like, where'd that come from? I guess I have some explaining to do an hour from now.
Don't worry about it. Let's go for a ride. Do you want to learn how to drive?
Oh, and then episodes later, they're in the TARDIS and they're traveling. Rose hears a bang outside. She's like, Doctor, what was that? He's like, nothing. We're just flying through 1987.
Don't worry about it. Is it Father's Day already?
Is it immoral to erase your time paradox doppelgangers?
I don't know, because what happens to them? If they never existed, is it immoral to kill something that never exists?
But they did exist at one point.
They did. And it's still them, too. So their time paradox doppelgangers disappear, which means they don't go back to create the future selves, which makes it a paradox. And I guess that's why the space dragons are there to eat everybody. Because they don't like to think about that.
Hey, I believe in the golden rule. I think it applies even to time travel. When Rose erases that other pair of them, it's like, Rose, how would you feel if another Rose showed up right now and erased your ass?
From their point of view, they're minding their own business, not messing with the time stream, and then a whole nother Rose shows up and gets them erased.
Because they're not robots. Like, you see the confusion on their face right before they get erased from existence.
I wonder if the Doctor was fast enough to process what was about to happen, too. It's on him, too. It's hugely irresponsible to do what he did.
Yeah. This is such a heavy Rose episode. What was your favorite Rose scene?
After her father discovers that she is, in fact, his Rose, they have that scene where they're talking, and she's trying not to spoil the whole, I'm here because you're dead can of beans, if you will. I thought Billy Piper did a really good job in that scene.
Is that the same scene where he asks her what they did together as she was growing up, and she's like, you took us fishing, and you're such a great dad, we went and did all this stuff.
Yeah.
Never said why he came here in the first place. If I had a time machine, I wouldn't have thought 1987 was anything special.
Not around here, anyway.
We just ended up here.
Lucky for me, eh? You hadn't been there to save me.
That was just a coincidence. That was just really good luck. It's amazing.
So, in the future, me and her indoors still together?
Yeah.
You still living with us?
Yeah.
Am I a good dad?
You told me a bedtime story every night when I was small. You were always there. You never missed one. And, you took us for picnics in the country every Saturday. You never let us down. You were there for us all the time. Someone I could really rely on.
That's not me.
I love that just because of his reaction. When he realizes it's BS.
Like, that's not me. Crap, I'm dead, aren't I?
He does seem like such a screw-up in that time frame that they're visiting. He's a tragic character. One, because he has to die, and two, because from that scene, I get that he wants to be a good husband, he wants to be a good father, but he knows he's not.
Mm-hmm.
Besides the time travel aspect of it, do you have any big problems with this episode?
There was, for the sake of plot, a lot of hand-wavy stuff. Felt like they come up with, like, the whole world's getting cleansed, but for some reason, that car that hits the father is still in the loop. I don't know how that creates the loop. Yeah, a lot of it is just happening, and I think Russell T Davies is hoping nobody's questioning why it's happening.
I don't think they ever get into the notion of God or some kind of religion at play, but when you have that car blipping in and out of existence, the one that's meant to hit Pete, that almost feels like some kind of intelligent design.
Yeah. I mean, it was from a writer.
And do you think what was happening, was it limited to Earth? Or was it the universe? How many space dragons were there?
I like to think it was just Earth. I think Earth became the time wound, and the space dragons were cleansing it. If it's everything, that doesn't make sense. The Doctor's not the only one bumbling around through space-time. Lots of people are doing it. I remember I saw a short where Einstein solved it and liked to randomly pull pranks on the Doctor. He's not the only one just bumbling around. I think if the whole universe gets effed up from one time mistake, that doesn't make any sense.
And what do you think was the Doctor's plan when he was trying to mitigate the damage and he said Rose could keep her time incursion and Pete Tyler would live on? What was supposed to happen?
I don't know. Maybe he was gonna do the time vortex thing again. Maybe he had that ace in his sleeve. Just go in and open up the TARDIS and be like, I fixed everything as a god. Also, I'm about to become younger and more handsome.
Oh, I'm just thinking of this. Because he was telling everybody at the wedding in that church, he's like, I'm going to save you guys. We'll get into my TARDIS when it reforms around this key, and I'll protect you. What if he meant Rose could keep her dad, and he was going to save those people, and he was going to whisk them away from that failed 1987, but everybody else on that Earth was going to die, and it was just going to, like, blink out of existence?
Oh, yeah, he just abandons everything. That created another time paradox, because then Rose doesn't exist anymore. We do see in the future that you can turn the TARDIS into a paradox machine, but I don't think that was in anybody's head.
Or that it was those time dragons were going to erase everything, so it's almost like it didn't happen. But for Rose's purposes, because the Doctor could travel with them and bring them out of that time frame, that it would keep those people that he took with him, and that's why Pete would still be alive. So then they would go to 2005 and just deposit Pete Tyler with Jackie.
That would make sense. That meant he was gone the whole time. Even if it is a time machine, they're no longer messing with the past, right? If they're going to her present and dropping him there.
That would be awkward, though, that Pete Tyler shows up and his wife's 20 years older than he is.
Yeah! Pop in and be like, hey, sweetie. Oh, no. I'm gonna go to the club.
My biggest problem here is that even though it's such a great Rose episode, do they set up her father in a previous episode? Does Rose mention him ever before this?
Nope. This is out of the blue.
It's like, what the heck? It's not like they went to Russell T. Davis and said, okay, we're going to buy the show. Start this tomorrow. Get writing. They should have seeded this earlier. How about just a photo of them in Jackie's flat in the first episode?
Instead of trying to instantly bang the Doctor, maybe be like, Pete. Kick him out.
And what's it say about Rose? I'm of two minds. I have the version of Rose I've constructed, but rewatching the show, when I look at that hard evidence, it paints a worse picture of her. If you were Rose and your dad died when you were a baby, why would it take you 6 episodes to say, hey, could we go see him?
I could see that as a working up to afraid type of deal. Maybe her hero was Charles Dickens, and he totally ruined that for her. And she's like, maybe we shouldn't cut straight to seeing what Pops is up to.
Rate Father's Day from 1 to 5.
I'm going to give it a 4. I really enjoyed it. It's a powerful, heavy episode. I do like paradox stuff that magically works itself out in the end, even if I don't understand how.
Do we ever see those paradox dragons again?
Nope. Which is weird, because it's like the CG department had to make them. You might as well bring them back.
I love me some continuity, and that is not good continuity to never show those things again. Because, yeah, paradoxes do pop up again.
They could easily do an episode where the TARDIS just materializes into a paradox. There's another time traveler there who screws everything up, right?
Yeah, like why weren't they getting on the Master's ass?
They should have eaten him. He had humanity killing humanity there at the end of season 3. They definitely should have shown up and snacked on him.
And there's a whole part where everybody on Earth turns into the Master. I don't know the future, but I'm pretty sure that's not part of the future, so that should be a paradox.
That sorts itself out.
Yeah. But even with all those problems, I'm always a sucker for a good dad story, so I'll give it a 4.
All right.
So this one, fiction or fantasy?
I'm going fantasy. No one knows how time paradoxes work. Like, you have to make all of that up.
Just because it's not hard science doesn't mean you can't present it in a way that feels logical. But this, it's all just a tool for the cry moments.
Which is fantasy. It should all be a tool for the cry moments.
What do you think is the Ninth Doctor's darkest moment in this episode?
When he was going to ditch Rose, they got into the argument, and he's like, fine, I'm out of here. Knowing they created something. He was going to ditch her in the past with her dad, who he didn't know either. He might have been a pervert.
Jeez, never mind the Ninth Doctor. John, I think you're the darkest in this episode. But that is nice. We get something here that we don't get in Back to the Future, where Pete says that Rose is a pretty woman, and she goes on that rant. No, what you're thinking, don't even go there, mate. Is this episode a ripoff of Star Trek's The City on the Edge of Forever?
No. It kind of is, yeah.
Because in both cases, it's left up to Captain Kirk. It's left up to Rose, instead of other people involved taking the reins and saying, you don't get a choice, okay? We're fixing this.
Kirk's got to throw his girlfriend in front of, what, it was a bus or something, right?
Still a vehicle accident.
Yeah, it was a vehicle accident still. But, you know, that was to prevent Nazis, not space dragons. Would have been cooler if that lady led to space dragons.
Well, how do we know Pete Tyler wasn't going to reinvigorate the neo-Nazi movement of Britain?
The next day he shaves his head and he's just like, you know what's pretty cool? White power.
And how do you feel about the actors playing themselves decades younger?
They could have done something for Jackie. She looked good for her age, but not when she's supposed to be 20 years younger.
And they're not super well-established characters. We already said that Pete hasn't come into play at all until now, but even Jackie, she's been in a few episodes. I think it was just a budget thing, why they reused her.
I could see that. Bring her in. Little Mickey, I didn't realize was that much older than Rose. That's weird, because she's supposed to be 19.
Yeah, so what, in this episode, is Mickey 4 years older than her?
4, maybe 5. Let's say 4, so it's less weird.
I like how every time Mickey shows up, he's just there as a punching bag. They keep making fun of him.
They do, yeah. He witnessed all those murders. All those other child murders, and they're like, dumb kid, he's screaming about monsters.
I guess we're supposed to assume that the events of the episode never happened.
I think so. After Pete chucks himself in front of the car, the Doctor mysteriously comes back from, I don't know where. I'm going to say the same dimension that the dragons are from, where they see the real God.
See, that stuff I don't get either. Okay, most of the episode doesn't happen, but Rose did change things because Jackie's story changes from the beginning to the end of the circumstances of Pete's death. Because I was going to say I like the psychology of Mickey clinging to Rose, and it's almost like a chicken or the egg thing. It's like, oh, is that why Mickey's attracted to her years later?
They had that joke about Rose baby bird imprinting on Mickey.
But that part of it never happened, so blah.
Who knows? Time travel. That's why it's fantasy.
What's your excitement level after these 3 episodes? Do you feel like the show is where it should be 6 eps into a 13-ep season?
Yes. especially after Dalek and this one, Father's Day. I'm feeling it. As someone who's never seen it before, I remember being jazzed for the future.
It's strange, though, these character-heavy episodes, one about the Doctor, and then a couple episodes later, one about Rose. Structurally, do you think it's a good idea to do it in the middle of the season instead of doing it closer to the beginning to help set them up more?
I think so. Almost formulaic episode. It's a procedural, if you will, so you gotta set the tone of the show first before you start going into characters.
I buy that.
Alright.
Although, I would slice it differently. Maybe move these episodes up to 4 and 5 instead of, 6 and 8?
Yeah.
Well, do you have any final thoughts about the episodes we watched?
These are some emotionally heavy episodes. These are some of my favorites. Next time we will be talking about my favorite episode, but these are still really high on the list. I love them, and this is really where the season, I think, hit its stride. Except for that last one, Simon Pegg, for some reason.
But you mean your favorite Eccleston episode?
Well, not just Eccleston, but in general, these are some of my favorite episodes.
Okay, because we'll get there. Here's a spoiler. For me, in all of Doctor Who, the original show, this revival, my favorite single episode is an Eccleston episode, and it's coming up.
Excellent.
Fantastic!